Hello. This is Fast Recap.
And today we're going through a 2012 drama movie called The Taste of Money.
Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care.
The movie begins with a man following an elderly man into a bank vault. The older man tells the astonished young man to bag all the money in the vault, which he does. Then, they drive back to their client's meeting place. There, the older man discusses some matters relating to his son with him before giving the client his cash and watching him leave the scene. Up next, Yoon Na-mi, a young lady, swims at a public swimming pool with her grandpa and some servants watching her. At that moment, a lady enters a room with the two guys from earlier there. She thanks them for helping her out and they respond that they were just doing their job. Up next, Joo Young-jack, the guy from earlier, comes upstairs to greet his master's daughter, Na-mi, who warns him not to bow down to greet her again. Joo Young smiles a bit as he accompanies her through the house. He watches her settle down with one of her family members. Joo Young soon leaves Na-mi and meets with Eva, their maid. In the next scene, Yoon Chul, another member of Yoon Na-mi's family, makes a public announcement at a press conference about the company. Meanwhile, Yoon Chul is being watched by his other family members in their family house. After watching the CEO give his speech, all four of them turn to each other to speak about their way of running things. Then, the men there commend Yoon Chul for his behavior that day in the press conference. Just then, Robert pays a visit to the family house and meets with the other members of the family. He tells them his concern about what Yoon Chul said on TV. Robert says he'd nullify his contract with them if Chul's speech backfires on them. Just then, Chairman Yoon walks into the meeting room on a call with someone. He finishes the call and talks to Robert, who's clearly pissed at his interruption. Up next, Yoon Chul celebrates his win with Robert and serves him some Armand de Brignac. As they toast and drink to their impending success, Yoon Chul reassures Robert that things will be fine. In the next scene, the entire family has dinner with Robert with them. Then, they discuss how Korea treats rich people like them. Up next, young Jack drives a golf cab to a lodge right on the golf club. There, he spectates Robert and Chairman Yoon playing with thoughts. Young Jack continues surveying the club from the outside and meets up with the chairman as soon as he's done with his business. Together, they both leave the lodge and talk on their way. Back at the house, the women watch a movie when Chairman Chul announces the return of their father. Up next, Chairman Yoon is seen with Eva playing naughty games with her. Young Jack catches them and expresses his shock. Eva sees him but says nothing as he walks out of the room. In the next scene, Robert and Yoon Chul discuss opening a slush fund for Chul just so he doesn't have to move money around anymore. Upon agreeing to his request, Yoon Chul asks his mother, Beck, for $1 billion and is granted the money by his grandpa, who built the entire company from scratch. Upon being granted his request, Yoon Chul gets to Robert and tells him the good news. Then, young Jack and Eva discuss her having an affair with Chairman Yoon, who has had a history of playing with women. Eva says she'd be fine as long as young Jack keeps his mouth shut. Up next, Na-mi, Joo Young-jack and Eva drive home as they make jokes about how unfaithful their locals men are. Thankfully, everyone gets home safely and everyone goes to bed. Baek Jeum, on the other hand, gets to her camera room and spies on everybody in the house. She sees her husband with Eva that night. She gets angry and storms out to intrude on them but stops on the way and lets out a scream. The next day, Eva receives a neck squeeze as Baek Jeum exerts her anger on her. Then, young Jack spectates Chairman Yoon and his daughter, Na-mi, as they play together. He frowns at his boss's actions and joins them on their beach lunch. There, the chairman discusses how disgusted he is at people like young Jack, people who live to serve others. Young Jack doesn't take it well but Chairman Yoon doesn't seem to care. They finish up their lunch and young Jack drives Na-mi home. On their way home, Na-mi holds hands with young Jack as she admires not telling on her father and Eva. At home, young Jack faces Na-mi and discusses with her mother their father's affair with Eva. Na-mi leaves her miserable mother alone with young Jack and the old woman takes advantage of young Jack. After this activity with the geriatric woman, young Jack drank some just to forget the experience he just had. Early the next morning, young Jack tries to resign. However, Baek Jeum chastises him and apologizes for the previous night in the weirdest of ways. Young Jack is quiet as ever as he watches his boss walk away. Eventually, young Jack changes his mind and goes on to meet with Na-mi and her mother, who was changing at the moment. They discuss for a little while and disperse after someone keeps yelling for everyone to come in. Young Jack meets with Baek Jeum, who tells him to man her spy room as she has dinner with Chairman Yoon and her other family members. At dinner, Baek Jeum discusses handing things over to young Jack just in case the chairman decides to quit and leave things behind. Chairman Yoon says he just wants peace of mind away from his wicked wife and to spend some time together with Eva.
Before we go next scenes, Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell.
This shocks Baek Ji-eum as she makes up her mind to make her husband's life a living hell. That night, Na-mi sees young Jack and his mother talking together. She is surprised as she thinks of what they could be planning. She calls young Jack, who just ignores her and goes on his merry way. The next day, young Jack informs Baek Ji-eum that Chairman Yoon was packing to travel abroad. She then places a travel ban on him just so he doesn't travel out of the country. Young Jack meets Nami and her father in the living room and listens in on their conversation. Na-mi asks her father why he didn't leave her mother when he was tired of her. Chairman Yoon says he was too crazy about the money and that was why he just couldn't leave her for a better life. He then lets his daughter know that he has nothing but contempt for her mother. Later on, Chairman Yoon packs out of the house and gets on the road. At the airport, Chairman Yoon finds out about his travel ban and leaves Eva and her children behind. Eva says she has to stay behind with the chairman and they both drive back home. In the next scene, young Jack is seen packing all the money from the family vault into a bag suspiciously as the scene transitions into Eva and Chairman Yoon having their bed thingy at a hotel. Meanwhile, Baek Ji-eum has a talk with Yoon Chol and her daughter with young Jack confirming that Eva was pregnant for her seemingly emasculated husband. This vexes Baek Ji-eum as she storms out of the place, swearing to destroy them. Just then, Chairman Yoon arrives and finds his vault empty and Chol gifting Robert, the foreigner, some money. Robert admires their extravagant lifestyle and compliments young Jack before turning back to Yoon Chol to discuss things further. In the next scene, young Jack drives Baek Ji-eum and meets Chairman Yoon on the way. The chairman stops them and explains to his wife to lift the travel ban so he could live his life. Baek Ji-eum still stands her ground and drives away. Up next, young Jack spectates a company party and Yoon Chol is served by a police inspector at the party. The detective also promises to dig up some dirt on Baek Ji-eum and Robert. Then, Baek Ji-eum pays her father, President Roh, a visit to the swimming pool where he was, telling him about the state of things. The old man just enjoys his time there as his assistant holds him afloat. In the next scene, Eva attends Holy Communion in church as she tears up over how life is for her and her kids at the moment. After Holy Communion, she walks out of the church totally not knowing she's being watched. She's abducted later on with young Jack in shock over their sudden change in plan. Apparently, their original target was Chairman Yoon. Things take a turn for worse as everyone finds Eva drowned and deceased in the family pool. Chairman Yoon is devastated as he jumps into the pool to hold Eva out. Baek Ji-eum, the criminal mastermind, just stands there and watches as if she's got nothing to do with what happened. Young Jack enters and saves the chairman from drowning. After rescuing the chairman, young Jack holds up Eva as he stares at Baek Ji-eum in disgust. In the next scene, Baek welcomes her husband back to life and acts as she loved him dearly. Young Jack receives his pay to keep his mouth shut and things go back to normal. Na-mi chastises her mother for having a hand in things but Baek acts normal. It doesn't take long before the duo gets into an argument. Na-mi is flabbergasted as her mother acts totally unfazed by what she did. She notices young Jack acting weird around the house but says nothing. Young Jack gets outside the house and is abducted and taken to a secret place. When he comes to, he almost died. Thankfully, his captors free him and leave him to find his way. Young Jack walks out of the home studio and back to his quarters. There, he sees Nami and the duo have a nice chat. They almost do the bed thingy but young Jack stops midway as he's tired and has to rest. Baek Ji-eum urges Robert not to think of getting out of the deal and that Yoon Chol would be out of prison soon. They get to Chol's prison and Robert explains the situation to Chol, who gets unruly. Meanwhile, Chairman Yoon is back at home in despair as he tries to finish himself off and sits in the tub as he bleeds slowly. Young Jack and Na-mi find him but it is already too late. Baek Ji-eum soon joins them and whines over her husband ending his own life. Chairman Yoon is nothing but happy he's finally leaving the devil of his life as he passes on. Yoon Chol gets free and is escorted to a car with Robert and Na-mi and young Jack. Chol accuses young Jack of having an affair with his mother, which angers young Jack. Jack stops the car and orders Chol out of the car only to get beaten up by Chol. We all know the young man wouldn't dare raise his hands on the president of their company. Young Jack gets back to his home and uncovers his stash of cash. Then, he pours the majority of it into Eva's coffin with her in it. In the next scene, our evil mother, Baek Ji-eum, hosts a memorial service for her late husband. Even young Jack gets irritated hearing all the lies she says just to save face. He gets to Chairman Yoon's grave and pays his condolences. Shortly afterward, Na-mi, Chol and Baek Ji-eum join young Jack and Baek offers him a position in the company. Jack rejects the offer and finally decides to resign. Then, they all chat about Baek making out with young Jack, hence disgracing her in front of her children and father. Everyone leaves the big gym and she blames her mistakes on her husband's corpse. Young Jack gets into a fight with one of the maids there and Naim comes to his rescue and hugs him. For once in his life, young Jack actually hugs her back. Then, the duo board a flight. Naomi exchanges her first-class seat with the person next to young Jack and wakes him up. Young Jack wakes up startled and the two have a nice chat with Naomi saying that she understands that her mother took advantage of him. Then, things get hot and steamy between them as the duo stands up and gets to the airport toilet to get down to business. In the next scene, young Jack and Naomi arrive in the Philippines to see Eva's kids. They present their deceased mother as her son requested to see her. Then, rain starts falling and Eva's daughter sees her mother in the coffin. The movie ends as young Jack looks up in the heavens, clearly sorry for what the Yoon family did to Eva and her kid.
All credit for this video clip goes to the film's owners. Please like and subscribe to help my channel grow if you enjoy my movie recaps, my channel, and what I do. Thank you very much. Also, have fun.